Welcome to the Birken live stream. I'm Ajahn Sona, and we have people joining us from all over the world. I hope it is not too inconvenient at your time. I think in most places it's a reasonable hour. But let's get on with our questions. What's the first question, Pia?
Ajahn, our first question is live from Georg from Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. Dear Ajahn Sona, thank you for making yourself available for Q&A. I notice that the defilements have a big chance to arise when I'm feeling tired and exhausted. I am lacking energy to be mindful, and I feel that any good work done before is washed away by giving in to the defilements. Do you have any advice on how to handle this situation wisely? Many thanks.
There's two ways of looking at this. There are certain types of emotions that are supported by energy and being non-fatigue. But there are other defilements that are actually weakened by fatigue. And so sometimes in the monastery, the forest monastery tradition, we do all-night sittings. We also get up at very early in the morning at 3 o'clock and so forth. And so you are sometimes very tired, sleep deprived in some ways. And there is a certain condition where when you're tired, your defilements are tired too. The defilements require energy. And so if you're low on energy, some things are not available to you. So you can also examine that, explore while you're tired, and see if which of the defilements are active, the quality of mindfulness, etc. So the other thing is to practice when you're tired, just being tired, and not finding it an annoyance or giving yourself excuses why you should be irritable or something like this. So it's an interesting area to explore. Fatigue is kind of deliberately induced sometimes in monastic training. You'll see this also in the Catholic traditions. They're getting up very early in the morning and experiencing fatigue. Things like hunger and fatigue. In the monastery, again, certain monasteries, we have practiced one meal a day kind of things in the forest tradition, and quite often in northeast Thailand, the one meal a day was mostly rice, so you're often very hungry as well, losing weight and sleep deprived. And it's most people experience hunger as something to be anxious about, but it's good to try sometimes just skipping a meal or being hungry and tired and realizing, well, all I am is hungry and tired. I don't have to be anxious about it. I don't have to be resentful of it or any of these things, because it's a rehearsal. It's rehearsal for times when sleep is not available and when food is not available and when discomfort is in the body. So we want to rehearse situations where we're not in an optimal condition physically or in terms of sleep quotas. So try changing the attitude about that and seeing that the mindfulness is a form of memory, and to remember that in fatigue, sleep deprivation, physical tiredness, hunger, that it's interesting to see that we can actually remain detached and clear in the midst of this. So sometimes it's interesting to even deliberately put yourself in that situation just to see how you are with a different set of expectations. So that's my recommendation for that. Next question, Pia.
Our next question is from Richie from Isle of Bute, United Kingdom. Dear Ajahn Sona, can you explain what right view and right intention are? What part of the mind is trained by right view? How do I train that part of the mind? Also, what does intention mean? Is it about our thoughts, or is it about the choices we make moment to moment? What is an intention? Do our views create our intentions, and those intentions then lead to our behavior?
Yes, our views precede our intentions, and so right view is basically an understanding of the Four Noble Truths. And that is that the first Noble Truth is there is suffering. And so this is the priority in human existence. For the Buddha, he prioritizes certain values over others. So not all knowledge has the same value. And he says the primary concern in human life is this suffering, and especially unnecessary suffering, and what it is that causes this situation, and how you can respond in an intelligent way to reduce suffering in one's own life and others. So this is what is called right view. And other things come out of this, especially, for instance, your attitude towards the past and the future. Do you have a future? Now, in modern times, quite often it's very part of the accepted idea that there is essentially a human just lives and dies, and in a sense does not have a future beyond this life. So one of the aspects of right view is to at least consider the possibility of consequences and a future beyond this life, so that that you can do work in this life, make effort in this life, which may have consequences beyond this life. If you have a very short-term view of things, you will the inability to delay gratification, for instance, beyond a day, you will not tend to accomplish certain things that people who have the long view of life will accomplish. So they're invested in next week or next month or next year, the future well-being of themselves and others, and this produces a whole different set of attitudes to life. So this intention follows this, and right intention is articulated. Non-ill will, non-cruelty, and renunciation are the three right intentions which follow from right view. So if you get the view described in the Four Noble Truths, something should follow. A drastic reduction in hostility to the world. Hostility also, of course, to yourself. So anger should diminish. When you understand the situation correctly that you're in, revealed in the Four Noble Truths, then anger, aversion diminishes, and the thought of harming diminishes. And then on the other side of the spectrum is this renunciation, which is the reduction of acquisitive tendencies. So a form of greed, and the desire and appreciation of being lighter and less burdened by endless ambitions and the desire to acquire things, reputation, notoriety, or fame. All of these things are types of desires. And when we see the situation, we become, those two things, anger and desire, are reduced. And in fact, you can know whether you have right view of the right understanding of the Four Noble Truths by the consequences which your intention, your attitude towards the world changes. And if it doesn't diminish your hostility and craving, then you don't have right view. So this is how these two go together. And when you asked what is intention, it's primarily emotion-driven. So when the Buddha talks about these things, it's not just an intellectual intention. It's not the intention to walk across the kitchen or to pick up a glass. It is the emotional content of your decisions. If those two things are in place, then a whole raft of things, the rest of the Eightfold Path, follow naturally. Right speech, right action, right livelihood easily follow from that. They're totally reshaped by right view and right intention. And it allows you to enter into the higher mind, which is the last three factors of the path. Right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration are available. If you don't have right view, followed by right intention, then right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration will not be available to you. So if anybody out there is thinking, why can't I meditate? Why is my mind endlessly disturbed, etc., then you need to go back to the first factors of the path, the right intention, or right understanding of the path, and then the right intention which follows. So thank you for the question. Very good question. By the way, so check out my videos on this, and there are several on the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. And so you will have a full explanation of right view and right intention on the Ajahn Sona YouTube channel. Next, Pia. Yeah.
Ajahn, our next question is live from Stefan. Good afternoon from the Netherlands. Thank you, Ajahn Sona, and the rest for your efforts. I have a question. How do I deal with lust as a hindrance, living in a society full of, quote, arousing stimuli?
Yeah, it is at this time, I suppose, much more. Some of the social structures which were in place 30, 40, 50 years ago were in order to make the environment around you a little calmer and so forth. But society decided that each individual should make their own choices about these things. So there are consequences to that, and it is more stimulating. So it's worth thinking, though, about this. The Buddha talks about the priorities in so he says that anger, hatred, etc. is a great stain on the personality, and that desire, even lust, is a lesser stain on the personality. But he also says that anger and hatred and so forth are easier to get rid of, and that lust, greed, desire, is hard to get rid of. It is very hard. And we can see why. So you see all kinds of addictions to pleasurable sensations. So desire is about acquiring pleasant sensations. And so, it's less socially harmful, less destructive perhaps. But and many people don't understand what's wrong with it. What's wrong with it is that you're always in a state of debt. You require the stimulus in order to experience pleasure. But if you could get, of course, if you don't have a base state, a neutral state of well-being, you will feel more or less in pain when you're not distracted by stimulating sights, sounds, smells, taste, touches, ideas. You'll feel hollow, empty. Existence itself will be painful. And now you're driven to fill the void with pleasant sensations. Now this is not a good situation to be in, because you really can't fulfill that all the time. And it gets harder and harder. The more there's a law of diminishing returns. When you overstimulate the senses, they become jaded, and you can no longer get satisfaction from things. So the Buddha tells you to do something counterintuitive, that is to reduce your sensory desires and satisfactions by attending wisely to sights and sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and ideas. And that means not to attend to the sign of the beautiful. Now, this is the advice of Greek philosophers as well. Socrates talks about going window shopping in Athens. And why does he go window shopping? To see all the things that he doesn't need. To feel free of the need for these things. To feel complete, full, well, in the midst of these things. And then you don't invest unwisely in the sign of the beautiful. So the mind itself, the objects which you consider to be desirable, are not inherently desirable. They're just facts out there. They're simply things that exist. It's you that makes them desirable. You invest in one aspect of them, and you increase and heighten the desirable aspect by turning it over in the mind and so forth. So you can undo this. This is the amazing capacity of the mind, if you choose to. Lots of people can't understand this. They think, but life would be no fun without that, etc. There is compensation, and the compensation is very high. If you can do this, you start to have a steady state of sense of completion and ease, joy even. You begin to fill the void. The mind, when it is not in debt to these desirable objects, that you create the desirability of the object, when it stops doing this, it doesn't just feel empty or unamused or something like this. It actually comes back to life, and its natural state is, as the Buddha says, its natural state is luminous, full, complete, and will enter into a state of joy. So this is where what you're looking for. So you're not just being a good boy and not indulging in pleasures. You're actually looking for higher pleasures. And this is a psychology experiment. Take it up, test the Buddha, see if it's true that when you really relax the mind and don't dwell on, invest in creating excessive ideas of desirability in sights and sounds and smells and tastes and touches, then see what happens. There'll be a little period of withdrawal, but then eventually your mind becomes full of ease and joy. So this is what meditation really is. It's a form of working contemplation throughout the day with this. Explore this idea. It's a very, very good that you asked this question. And the monks, of course, have to go on alms round every day through a village. And the advice to them by the Buddha is, do not attend to the sign of the beautiful, and do not attend to the sign of the ugly, because of the fault, because both of those will create aversion and desire in your mind. But what should you attend to? You should attend to the sign of peace. The mind, if you can get your mind to a state of peace, then invest in maintaining that, keeping that going, sustaining it, deepening it. Keep your eyes inward. So this is the advice of the Buddha. Of course, look on, again, more YouTube videos, because I've explored this in great detail on the 5 hindrances, desire being one of them, and we'll answer your questions and give you techniques for this in greater detail. Okay.
Ajahn, our next question is from Gary from Kamloops, BC, Canada. I'd like to ask about, quote, things we look forward to. When young, we look forward to things like Christmas and presents, birthday parties, and our first bike. As we get older, it may be our first car, a house, gourmet dinners, and concerts. Such things can engage us, seemingly help sustain us, motivate us, and influence our decisions and our directions, at least temporarily. But as one proceeds on the Buddhist path, the attraction and allure for many, if not most of these things, starts to fade and diminish. And with that, there can be a corresponding shift to an increased awareness, greater understanding, and a stronger sense of an inner life. My question is, are there specific and appropriate things on the Buddhist path that we can and should look forward to help fuel our energy and focus our direction? Or is the concept itself an expression of self and craving, and something that should be relaxed and released? With gratitude for your support.
This question comes up quite a bit, and there's a lot of confusion on it. There's the 6th factor of the path is right effort, and the effort is a form of what we call chanda. Rather than desire, we shouldn't think of your spiritual aspirations, your aspiration to completely overcome unsatisfactory and suffering in life, and to recognize that there are higher values which are more sustainable, more continuous in life. You're informed of that by reading about the 4 Noble Truths and remembering that one of them is that there is an end to suffering, and that the path is the way to the end of suffering. And so you have to walk that path, and that requires determination and energy and an investment of time. And now, should you look forward to the results of this? The Buddha says, yes, go ahead and look forward to the results of this. It's simply right effort and chanda, or spiritual aspiration. You should have a spiritual aspiration. And it's not a creation of a new self. It's the diminishing of all senses of self, eventually towards a sense of freedom. And so the Buddha gives an example. A man comes to him and says, you teach the end of desire, but don't we have to have desire to come to the end of desire? And isn't that a paradox? And by the way, many Buddhist teachers are more like the man than the Buddha, asking that question. They think it's a paradox. There are some schools which actually say, give up the striving for enlightenment, etc. The Buddha answers this in a different way. He says, it is like a man who has a sliver. Then he gets a needle to get the sliver out. But once he gets the sliver out, he doesn't continue with the needle. He sets both the sliver and the needle aside. So the sliver is that you have a problem. Everybody has a problem. Everybody is suffering in certain ways. You must make an effort and desire to come to the end of suffering. So that's the needle. And that needle, you're going to have to poke around into the problems in order to remove them. And when you have removed them, you can set all of that stuff aside and bask in the freedom that results from that. But part of that is strong determination, aspiration, and the Buddha clearly articulates this. So there is no hint of an idea that you abandon all desire, including the desire to be free of desire. That is, frankly, impossible, because in order to do that, you'd have to be fully enlightened. So, it's very nice to recommend just be fully enlightened, and then you won't have all of these problems. But how you're going to get to enlightenment? This is why there's a path. So there's suffering, and there's an end to suffering. But that's not the full articulation of the Buddha. There's a path to the end of suffering. So there's a process to get you there. And that process involves lots of energy and effort and learning, etc.
Ajahn, our next question is live from Jenny Pai near Kamloops. Ajahn, how does one recognize the difference between samvega and depression?
Well, hello, Jenny Pai. So, yes, samvega can be thought of as a spiritual urgency, and also a falling away of worldly motivations. And as people begin to wise up in life and get real, not everybody, I would say the majority of people don't seem to wise up and get real. And if you are fortunate enough to be wising up and getting real, you are going to be marginalized. You're not going to be enthusiastically involved in a lot of the, frankly, silly things that people spend their time doing. And the question comes up, am I depressed? I mean, this is the behavior of a depressed person as well. But there's a very different structure to it. It's not mere sadness, but it is disenchantment with the things that people seem to enjoy. But it's simply a stage of growth where you're outgrowing childish amusements. And since most normal people don't outgrow childish amusements, psychologists don't know what to make of it. Of course, some good psychologists and good psychiatrists also have gone through it themselves and have taken up a spiritual path. And a good psychiatrist, a good psychologist will try to distinguish whether the patient is actually, what do they say, that their client is depressed or actually on the spiritual path. And if they are, they won't recommend medications for depression or anything like that. What they'll do is recommend that you go to a monastery or a yoga center or something, whatever the flavor of spiritual practice, and that you will overcome your issues by engaging in spiritual practice. And so I have people coming to the monastery on a regular basis who have been recommended by a psychologist or psychiatrist that you don't have a problem, a psychiatric problem or a psychological problem. What you have, you are now engaged in a spiritual journey. And that journey can have, there can be times when you have to walk through deserts. It's just the nature of the journey, and that's why you come to a community and experience teachers, because they have crossed those arid landscapes themselves, and they know what it feels like, and they can encourage you that there is water on the other side and to continue. So that's the difference, and it's not always easy for the person to assess this. But one should ask questions of teachers and get encouragement, just like you're doing right now. So let's go on to the next question.
Our next question is live from Benedict from Germany. What is the average daily frequency and length of breath meditation sessions you recommend to normal, quote, householders or occupational people?
Well, usually it's probably wise to start with a limited period, even 10 minutes. It's an extraordinarily high demand on attention to actually be fully present for each breath. And the instructions that the Buddha gives in the beginning of his sutta on breath meditation is that you just note whether the breath is long or short on the inhalation or the exhalation. And it's possible to note that without actually being fully present every microsecond of the time. If you can manage to note whether your breath is long or short, then you move on to another demand on attention, and that is to experience the complete exhalation and inhalation of the breath, the entire body of the breath. And this is the way I interpret it, to be fully present to the entire inhalation and exhalation every microsecond. Now that's an extraordinarily high demand on attention. By the way, this is similar to learning to play the violin. The bow, at first, it's very awkward. It sounds like you're torturing a cat. To get that bow to smoothly resonate those strings is tricky. And you just get up and down bows for various lengths of time. And then eventually, the next stage is to get a consistent, smooth, beautiful tone continuously with an up bow and a down bow. And this is just what we're doing with the breath. Continuous, learning to have a continuous stream of attention. And we're using a subtle object. Now the breath is not music. It's something that's very neutral. It's neither interesting nor repulsive. And normally, for us to pay attention to something, we want interesting objects to pay attention to. Strangely enough, the stronger the stimulus that we require, the weaker our attention becomes. So some people, they can watch a very vivid horror movie because the contents is so graphic and strong and full of explosions and shocks and so forth. It catches their attention. But to go out to a park, they can't pay attention. They can't be in the park and enjoy themselves. So you'll see different levels of people's capacity to pay attention. The lower the stimulus, like just ease in nature, means that you already have pretty good attention span. But we're going to make supernormal demands on it. We're going to actually watch the breath, which is inconceivably nothing, neutral, and we're going to enjoy it. We're going to actually fully pay attention. And by the way, when you do fully pay attention to the breath, it becomes joyful, as with anything that really interests you, because it's interest itself is why you enjoy yourself, and you're the source of the interest. So you try it with the breath, and it can be extraordinarily tricky. The mind just vanishes. You end up being kidnapped again and again, find yourself on the other side of Europe, So you come back to the breath, and this, maybe 10 minutes to begin with, and then build up to 20 minutes. And then after a time, if you're a keener, maybe up to 45 minutes or even an hour. And occasionally you can go to a retreat where actually most of the day is invested in breath, watching the breath. And that's extraordinary. If you go for a week or a 10-day retreat and you're training the mind for 10 days, you come out the other side of that a different person. It changes everything. how you experience the world. Everything changes. It's an amazing process. When you return home, if you can keep it up for twice a day, that's great. And some people have the time and determination to do that. Many people's household lives are very, very busy, so they have trouble keeping it up. But if you have the chance, then I would say that your chances of keeping it up in the morning are better than at night, if you go to work. So morning, you've had a chance to rest, and you do your morning mindfulness of the breathing up to 45 minutes, and then it changes the texture of the day. After working all day and coming home and having a lot of things on your mind from the interactions you've had, it's quite often people find it's more difficult to sit down and do breath meditation in the evening. But if you have a fortunate lifestyle where you don't go out and have to rough it up with other people, it's possible to have a serene morning and a serene evening as well. So those are some basic advice which I've given over the years to people coming to this breath meditation. By the way, so again, watch the YouTube channel. I go into great detail on breath meditation. There are a dozen talks on this with the full details of how to do it, when to do it, and what to expect. Next question, Pia.
Our next question is from John from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Is it beneficial to try the jhana levels above 4? How could one try level 4 regarding infinite space? Thanks.
I think for most people, you can set it aside, the endeavor to go beyond what's the first. What is John? What John is referring to, for those who are listening, you may not be all familiar with this, but the 8th factor of the Eightfold Path, the last one, is a state of extraordinary, supernormal focus and clarity of the mind. Most people won't even get there. They will find more clarity and organization of their mind and more lightness of being, but to actually get to the 8th factor, which referred to as the 4 deep jhanas, kind of forms of lucid concentration, are called supernormal. In other words, normal people don't do that. Only supernormal people can do that. And so be aware, this is a very, very high and refined condition of the mind. And even the supernormal people, they'd be fortunate to attain the first jhana, the first level of this, or the second level. Now, the second level is where all discursive activity, the inner voices and the idea processing of the mind ceases, and one is in a state of bliss, joy and ease, and complete lucidity and clarity. Thought has been suspended. You can imagine, how do you do this? And it goes deeper into the 3rd and the 4th, and the 4th jhana. Now these are, I call them sort of levels of they're kind of rooms in a cave. And the first, just to get to the cave, the mouth of the cave is extraordinary. You get in out of the baking hot sun and away from the terrible noises and violence of the world. And it's a beautiful cave. And then there's another room behind that, which is even cooler and more beautiful and even quieter. And then there's another room beyond that, where it becomes extraordinary. And then there's a room even beyond that, where it's all is a very subtle quality of perfect balance. And you experience it as without body. Your body, your physical body is not even present. The mind is in a state of pristine, cool balance. It's an extraordinary condition of mind. It's should not be underestimated. And then there's these other conditions which you mentioned beyond that, which are called formless attainments. It's basically, you can set aside the formless attainments. They're not requirements. You don't find them in the path directly. You find the four form jhanas, first, second, third, and fourth jhanas, but you don't find the formless in the Eightfold Path. As I say, I've been at this for a long time, and I've met many, many people, talked to many, many monks about this. And you have to understand these are super normal high states to get to. And any concern with the formless jhanas, the 5 to 8, numbers 5 to 8, you can set those aside. That's not homework that you need to do. But it's good to ask the question. This is a bit on the esoteric side. Most of the people will not ever be concerned with it in their entire lives. And even most monks will not ever be concerned with those arupa jhanas either in their entire lives. So you understand this is very esoteric, on the edge. Yeah. Okay, Pia.
Ajahn, our next question is from Kathy. Greetings from Indiana. Greed, hatred, and delusion. Can you please give examples of delusion? Thank you.
Delusion is the root of greed and hatred. And it's because you don't have, it's because the person does not have a proper view of reality that they get mad at the universe or want to possess the universe. And the problem is that with anger is that it feels bad and it is immature and irrational in response to a universe which has not the slightest interest in what in your opinion about it. And desire is the other side of that, which is that you want to possess and hold and keep aspects of the universe, and the universe is by nature is a fluid. So you're reaching into a fluid and trying to treat it as if it was a solid, and that's delusional. So delusion is basically three kinds of lack of knowledge. The first is simply the absence of knowledge. The second is misinformation, misunderstanding. And the third is disinformation. Deliberate being deliberately misinformed about the nature of reality. So delusion is sometimes called avijja, which is the same word as, it's in Pali or Sanskrit, is the same as ignorance in English. The lack of knowledge. Not, gnosis, knowledge. And so we have ideas which are fed to us as children about what we're not supposed to like and how we're supposed to react, and we are told what we want and what we should get and how happy it's going to make us. We set out with this bunch of information which is really misinformed, and sometimes people are even consciously disinforming you about things. And we set off into life armed with misinformation, the wrong map, and we will meet frustration. We will suffer. We will have frustrations, not able to get what we want, and then we'll be disappointed to get what we want, and we will be angry because we're not allowed to get what we want, etc. So we entangle ourselves because of the wrong information. So delusion is misinformation about the nature of reality. And the signs of it are anger and desire. So I should just mention how to undo this. You don't directly see your delusions, by the way. It wouldn't be a delusion if you felt deluded. Your delusions are completely real. They seem absolutely true and accurate, and that's why they're called delusions. However, you can weaken them and come out of your delusions by reducing anger and greed. So that's how you undo your delusions. You actually reduce the food of delusion. The food of delusion, your delusions are supported by anger and greed. And so if you can reduce your anger and reduce your desires and greed, your understanding of the universe will clear up. So that's how it's done. Okay, so next question.
Our next question is live from Laura. Ajahn, last week you ended by answering a question about how to live a lay life inspired by monasticism, and you spoke about finding this necessary balance between the two, and about not trying to be a monastic when you are not. Can you give a few concrete examples or specifics about how lay people should not try to mimic monastics' lifestyle? Thank you.
Well, sometimes there are communities, even like yoga communities, Zen communities and so forth, where people are actually they're lay people, they have a family and so forth, but they emulate the idea, they even sometimes call themselves monks, but they're not monks. And this is, they're giving themselves the worst of both worlds, because if you're a lay householder, you can't really live fully as a monastic. And if you're a monastic, you can't live properly as a lay person. So the Buddha gives you, there's two types of lifestyles here. And the lay person has some of the benefits and joys, but also the burdens of the lay life. And the monastic has the joys and some of the burdens of the monastic life. But if you get them overlapping, you might lose all the joys of the household life and the monastic life and find yourself unable to completely do either. So the Buddha has articulated this. So the householder is primarily given 5 precepts for their behavior, and one of them is there's no concern about what you eat or when you eat, etc. For the monastic, there are strict limits on the period of the day when you can eat and how you should eat and how you should relate to possessions and the control over food and so forth. So it's not necessary or beneficial for the layperson to bring in these requirements around food, except if they're in a monastery for an extended period of time. And then the layperson can live in a quasi-monastic way by taking 8 precepts. And the Buddha is quite a genius in terms of laying out what is adequate for peaceful experience, but not unnecessarily excessive. And it's primarily these 8 precepts, which can be taken voluntarily. And the Buddha recommends that Buddhist lay people, once every 2 weeks, should live for a period of 24 hours as a monastic. And they give up, at that time, they give up, they take the precept of celibacy, so a reduction of sensual opportunities, and they should take the restriction on food as well, so they can form and flow in a monastic situation. And he thinks it's a good idea that once a week, that for a day and a night, that you live like sort of like a monastic. You don't shave your head or so forth. It's not required, or wear special clothes, but you give up entertainment, singing, dancing, perfumes, adornments, indulgence in comfortable chairs and beds, etc., and that you practice meditation for that period of time. And so that's one day out of every 2 weeks, the full moon and the new moon. If you can do it once a week, even better. But when you go back to your household, if you're living like a monk in the midst of a family, it's going to be very awkward. You're going to have to adapt in some ways to their schedules and when they eat and why they eat, and there's going to be noises and entertainments and so forth going on. So the monastic life doesn't import very well into the household life. And the household life should never import into the monastic life, except for that brief commitment to 8 precepts, which you undertake in a monastery, or you can do it at home if you can manage to not create too much conflict with the other people who live in your household. Otherwise, you're going to just create more problems than solve problems. So this is very interesting area to explore. Maybe I'll do a whole Dhamma talk on this. I think I should make a whole talk on this. Thank you for the question. Yeah.
Our next question is from Joseph from Astoria, Oregon, United States. Is a belief in reincarnation a necessary prerequisite to following the Noble Eightfold Path?
It is called conventional right view. So it's called worldly right view. And so it helps you to hold it as a possibility. The Buddha warns against a conviction against it. So, but since you probably don't know and you're not certain of this, but you can hold it as a useful possibility. Hold it as a useful possibility which motivates you beyond the end of this life, and also gives you a sense that there is meaning or cause and effect which manifests either in this life or beyond, so that the moral dimension of life becomes real. Now, if you have a strong conviction of annihilation at the end of this life versus continuation, that's essentially your existence tends to be absurd. And you see that in people's lives that bad things happen to good things happen to bad people. Sometimes good things happen to good people, sometimes bad things happen to bad people. It's quite random, and within a single lifetime, it's very hard to show that there is a certain moral order to things, that things have meaning and moral consequences and purpose. And that will affect your emotional condition. Eventually, that can easily produce a sense of depression, meaninglessness, and existential angst. So by holding this view that there are moral consequences and that they play out beyond this life, you change your attitude. And it's quite a remarkable thing to feel. You actually have a transformation of feeling in life if you hold that attitude. And it's something that there are many benefits to holding it, and no actual downsides to holding it. So that's how you address this idea of future lives, reincarnation, rebirth. It's primarily around motivations for meaning and consequences. So it's a very deep area to talk about, and I have talked about it. Look at videos on death. So I've recently made a one called Maranasati, or mindfulness of death, and I talk a lot about the attitudes towards what people think death is, why, how they think about it, why they think about it, and the consequences of various versions of your ideas about death. So I think we have time for one more question, perhaps. Yeah.
Ajahn, our final question is live from Lake in Portland. Dear Ajahn, I feel so busy a lot of the time. I have a strong desire to do nothing, go nowhere, and be no one, and yet tasks and commitments vie for my attention. I sense that doing less would serve me well, but I am not sure how to get there. I welcome any guidance you have on this topic.
Yeah, well, this turns into a whole strategies for living the simple life and the good life. And it involves economics, it involves livelihood, it involves relationships, it involves entertainment, it involves the place that you live. So you're now attempting to get the blessings of life. And there is a sutta on what's called the Sutta on Great Blessings, the Mangala Sutta. And it articulates some of the things that help promote the good life for the layperson. And so, the first thing to do is look for what I call the 20% solution. So if you can reduce the busyness and demands of your life by 20%, so that's if you work 5 days a week, if you can possibly get it to 4, one more day off, there's quite a strong benefit of an impression from having 20% more time. So look for, you may not be able to get the 100% solution, but look for the 20, the 30, the 40, the 50. And lots of people do this. They actually refuse promotions. They take less money for more time. They become thriftier and more savvy with their money because they can turn the money into time. They change where they live and who they live with and what they do with their days. And so it's a gradual process. But there are many good books written about this, strategies for living a more interior life. And there's a lot of communities that support this and understand that need in humans. So please take advantage of the information available, read books on this, learn clever strategies for producing this. Yeah. So we will leave it for today.